Hey guys, it's Sasha. In this video, I'm going to share 7 important money tricks that can help you build wealth more quickly. Just a word of warning. These methods are not going to be the kind of things that you'll hear in other generic videos or read in your typical article. These are not your everyday bit of financial advice. In fact, these tricks are pretty high risk. I personally use all of these and they work pretty well for me, but some people would probably say that these are actually really bad financial advice. Some of these will take a lot of guts, others take a lot of effort or focus. None of them are easy, and all of them carry a lot of risk. So don't do these at home unless you really decide for yourself that you want to go against the grain of popular financial advice and understand the implications. I thought I'd share them anyway. All right. The first one is about managing personal finance and specifically managing debt. Now, I have worked in fast, small growing companies and I've started my own business over time. And I manage my own personal finance in the same way that I manage the finances of a young, fast growing company. I assess my personal balance sheet by looking at my assets versus my liabilities. I have debt, but I also have assets at the same time, and this goes against everything you'll hear about managing your personal finance as well. I do not prioritize paying down cheap, sustainable debt. I don't care for that. Sometimes I will have personal free cash flow. That means I have more money coming into my budget than leaving on a monthly basis. And when that happens, I go and take that free cash, I invest it into assets. I own my own house. I have investments. I treat investments as a current asset because they are fluid. I can sell out of all of my investing positions at any time and have the money in my bank account within about a week. And I look at my finances in the same way that I'd look at the finances of a high growth company that I would want to invest in. I want my current assets to be greater than my current liabilities. That is a good place to be. That means at any one time, I could go and take all of my investments out and repay all of my short-term debt immediately. Now, I'm using the word current loosely here. I treat current debt as being anything other than mortgages, any short-term debt. But earlier on, I didn't even have that balance struck. I've been in positions before where my current assets were lower than my current debt. And I felt perfectly fine about it because I was using that debt as a leverage instrument to enable me to grow revenue. It funded me being able to start my own business. It funded me being able to learn. And I don't focus on repaying debt. I don't really care about becoming debt-free or becoming mortgage-free. Those are not my objectives. I care about growing my revenue and growing my assets. And if those assets and revenues are growing at a rate that is substantially higher than that debt, preferably accelerating at the same time, I really don't care about the absolute debt figure. It's the ratios that really count. Now, I did warn you, this is not going to be good financial advice. Let's move on to the second one. The second strategy is to focus on investing time only in non-linear growth of assets and revenues. Now, I'm going to explain exactly what that means. It kind of sounds simple in a way, but it really is an important factor that many people don't really consider fully. Most sensible people, unlike me, have a job, and that job pays an amount of money per month. And there are 2 ways that that revenue stream can grow. 1, you can get a better paying job, so your salary will increase by some kind of percentage. Number 2, you can work more hours or maybe get a second job. The hours will then increase by a percentage instead. And as your revenue is basically your salary, and salary multiplies by time, you will then be able to earn more money if either your salary or your time increase because of that formula. But that growth is linear. The amount of time that you have to work is limited, and you're probably already working most of that time anyway. The amount of salary that you can earn also has natural caps. You might be able to earn 10% more. Maybe you'll be able to earn 20% more. Can you earn 200% more in your work? Probably quite unlikely. Now, I have been working for myself for about 7 years running my own business, and more recently, I've been focusing on building new businesses that can deliver non-linear growth as well. This YouTube channel, the one that you're watching right now, is one example. I started making videos on this channel at the end of March 2020. This was my first foray into YouTube, and in the first few months, I made absolutely nothing. I earned nothing. Then in September last year, I was making about $500 a month from YouTube. By December, I was making about $2,000 per month. And over the summer this year, I'm averaging about $17,000 per month from YouTube. Now, as the revenues grow, the time and money that I have spent to get to that revenue begin getting paid off. And that growth in revenue is not linear because of how YouTube and general online content work. I also run a few different websites, and I'm working on building out systems that generate revenue in a non-linear way there as well. But that's a story for a little bit later. Let's move on to number 3. And number 3 is I don't carry any cash. This is another one that goes against all the advice that you'll hear, and most people probably agree that it's a bad approach. But I don't carry any cash. I don't have any cash sitting around. I only have just about enough money in the current account for my upcoming regular expenses, and I don't have an emergency fund. And there is a reason for that. I always have a million different places where I can deploy cash to grow my assets or revenue and to focus on growing those things for the future. Each of the businesses that I have can grow if I put more cash into it. I can produce more content if I hire more people to help. I have upgraded my kit, for example, for YouTube, and I still want to make a lot of upgrades that I haven't made yet because they require cash. I want a new camera, for example. I want to invest in a switcher and a bunch of other things that you probably don't care about. But I haven't got them yet for my YouTube channel. I'm waiting for more cash so I can prioritize it on those things when the time is right. Some of the spare cash that I have goes into different types of investments as well, because they also yield long-term growth through those assets appreciating in value. But I personally have next to no cash on me at any time. Now, trick number 4 is to make sure that you are on the right side of the line between investing and speculation. Now, you might have figured out by now that I am relatively happy with taking on risk, but there is definitely a line that I do not want to cross when it comes to risk. And this comes from me working in risk management for a large part of my life. And that line is when investments turn into speculation. Now, I know that speculation could earn a lot of money, probably far more than I will be earning in terms of percentages. And sometimes they can earn that money really quickly, but speculation can also crash just as quickly as speculative investments have far more unknown unknowns. And as a mathematician, I absolutely hate having unknown unknowns. I like maximizing my level of certainty. So this is why I do not play the short squeeze game against the hedge funds with GameStop or AMC. This is also why I do not generally invest in cryptocurrency. At all times, I want to base my investing decisions on fundamentals, on things that I can assess, on things that I can work out, things I can genuinely place likelihoods on, things where the majority of the future outcomes can be forecasted to some degree. And I know that I'll miss out on some opportunities like Bitcoin increasing in value by 1,100 billion%. But I'm okay with that. There is no real link between mathematical fundamentals and the current state of crypto valuations. And maybe they're going to go up in value. I'm not saying that they're not, but for me, the outcomes are based more on gambling kind of theory. And hey, the odds could be good, but I don't like gambling because there is no way to actually know what those odds are, or at least approximate them. A load of unknown unknowns can kill that speculative investment, and I don't like playing that game either. For crypto, for example, banks could force legal changes, governments could enforce prohibitive legislation, there can be undiscovered fundamental technical flaws in their structure or some unforeseen economic flaws, and they could all be fatal. And I'm not saying that any of these will play out, they probably won't. But sure, some of my investments are also speculative. I hold positions, for example, in companies like Lucid, which is a car company valued at $36 billion that hasn't actually sold a single car yet. I am aware of the risks involved. I am aware that some people will claim that that is speculative, but that's about as close to the line as I personally get. I feel I can still assess those risks and make meaningful data-based projections for my investment, and I am happy with that. Now, the 5th trick is to diversify income streams to mitigate volatility and risk. And this is one that is a lot more difficult than it sounds. It means working on more than one thing at a time. It means maybe getting up at 5 a.m. to work on something before you start working on something else at 8 or 9 a.m. Or maybe it means working late into the night or the weekend. But if you want to have complete financial security, freedom, etc., this may be the step that you would need to take. For my content business, for example, I diversify my income between platforms. I have content on YouTube here, and I also have websites, for example, in this business. And if one was to disappear overnight for whatever reason, I still have the others that will remain. I have different revenue streams and I'm working to add more. There's ads, affiliates, and direct sales. For example, if something happens to one of these, if ads, for example, suddenly, for whatever reason, start earning 50% less revenue, it doesn't hit my overall numbers that much. I also diversify between industries. This channel talks about money, but I've also got another website that is all about travel. And you can imagine how that website is doing over the last 2 years because of the situation we find ourselves in. But because my revenue streams are diversified, I can weather that storm and I can wait it out. It's important though to not go too far. You don't want to spread yourself thin. You want some diversification to mitigate for major black swan events, major setbacks, major issues happening. But you want to give yourself enough time to pay enough attention to each of the projects so that that project can grow. So let's move on to trick number 6 now, because I'm getting a bit carried away. And the trick number 6 is always be prepared for sharp turns and diving in at the deep end. Now, it is critical to be prepared to take advantage of opportunities or to make rapid moves when you have to. This is something that a lot of people actually find very difficult because having this mindset can feel very uncomfortable. It can put you out of your comfort zone. But sometimes life will throw things at you. And if you are not ready to jump, if you're not ready to take action, you will miss it. Sometimes life will throw you an opportunity. Maybe you'll hear about that dream job, for example, being advertised, but you're too busy. You're afraid that you won't get it. It doesn't really make sense for you to apply. You don't want to move to a different city. You don't want to move to a different country. What if you don't even like the job and you give up the current job that you have that you kind of think is okay? People are often hesitant to grab an opportunity when it presents itself. Sometimes life will actually go and throw you a crisis. And if you don't move fast, you can get left behind. You might work in an industry that gets hit hard by the economy or changing times. You can choose to stick it out and see what happens. Maybe things will change. Maybe things will actually improve in the future. Who knows? But things can actually not change. Instead, they can decay and it can send you down a spiral that becomes harder and harder to get out of. Like most people, I've had this happen several times to me as well. I've worked for companies that have gone bust. I've lost my job in 5 minutes during the financial crisis when I worked in a bank. I've been there. I've had all of these experiences. I've had my company get crushed by Brexit and the events that happened last year globally. Now, I do know how it feels, but you do have to keep a cool head. You have to take a step back. You have to analyze the situation and you have to make your move. There was a reason why I started this YouTube channel in March last year. Now let's move on to the next tip. And this one is really hard, but also really effective. And it is to prioritize long-term growth over short-term profit. Now, I'm talking in business terms again, because remember, I generally actually think about personal finance in the same way as managing a business. When presented with a choice, I will always pick the long-term growth option over the short-term profit choice. It's a bit like investing in an early-stage company when that company is technically making a loss every single quarter because they are investing all of their money that they have today, what little they have, and all of their effort into growing revenues in future years instead, rather than taking the profits and paying dividends. These choices may not be very obvious, and they can actually be quite difficult to make. Now, after I lost my banking job during the financial crisis, I had a few different job offers to join other banks, for example, and I could get a promotion. I could become a senior analyst while I was at it. Sounded pretty good, but instead, I went and took a lower paid job in the energy sector instead because it was a manager level role. It let me get experience of managing a team, of having people work for me for the first time. It taught me a lot of things that you can't learn from a book. And those things let me move much faster up the career ladder after I had that job. I chose to take less money at the time because I knew that it would build a better trajectory in the future, instead of pocketing a higher salary, which would not have led me to have the same opportunities afterwards. I do the exact same thing today. I could be banking a lot of the revenue that I am making, but I don't need to prove anything to myself or to anybody else. So I constantly reinvest today's revenue into scaling my business for the future instead of feeling smug. That's just how I'm wired. Now, I hope you found this video useful. If you did, please don't forget to smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you guys later.